Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to another episode of the Talk Room series of podcasts, where we look at the question of how to be your best self. We do that by looking at mental health and well-being and how this applies to people's daily lives. For those people who haven't seen any of our previous podcasts, I'd like to introduce my co-presenter, Ian. Ian is a senior accredited member of the National Counselling Society and the founder member of Hope Therapy and Counselling Services. A warm welcome to you, Ian.
Thank you, Wendy. And to introduce you, a highly experienced CBT psychotherapist working in private practice and more generally within the area of mental health for well over 30 years now. So a really warm welcome to you as well, Wendy.
Thank you very much, Ian. So today we're here to delve into a topical subject of navigating mental health and relationship changes over the winter holiday season, or as we all know, it's known as Christmas as well. So, Ian, I know your counselling agency, Hope Therapy and Counselling Services, does a tremendous amount of work around this period. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the challenges that people experience at this time of year.
Of course. Thank you, Wendy. So this time of year can often be portrayed as a time of joy, of festivities, a period of togetherness. But the reality for many is that it can also bring some really unique challenges as well, particularly regarding mental health and relationships as well. So in this episode, we'll be exploring the impact of this time of year on well-being, discussing everything that can cause that tension, that stress that people can often feel. And we'll also discuss strategies people can try to consider to help them navigate through this time of year as well. So I think for me, the thing that I want to really stress is that whatever people's experiences may be, they absolutely are not alone. There's a vast number of people all going through a variety of emotions and a variety of challenges, some good and some not so good as well.
Okay, very good point, Ian. Very good points made there. So let's start by looking at things that can cause stress for people during these holidays. So, Ian, we know people face a variety of challenges and pressures, from gift giving to the impact of seasonal affective disorder. The holiday season can take a toll on our mental health and well-being, and also the relationships we have. So I wonder if you could start by saying a little bit more about the type of relationship challenges people may encounter.
Yeah, of course. So whether people are navigating the challenges of a romantic relationship or dealing with the complexity of family dynamics, the holiday season can really put a strain on our connections with others, causing all sorts of emotions, causing all sorts of pressures. The holiday season often comes with a heightened internal and external sense of expectation. Individuals can feel a sense of pressure to create the perfect holiday experience for family and the perfect sense of experience for loved ones, which can really increase that sense of stress, anxiety, and even lead to a sense of inadequacy for people as well. Also, the emphasis on social gatherings and that sense of togetherness can be really challenging for many people. It can raise things for those who struggle with social anxiety. Being expected to connect and to socialize can be really challenging for some, but also can really magnify issues for those dealing with loneliness, those dealing with grief. So I think I would simply say that whatever emotion people feel at this time of year, you certainly won't be alone.
Mm. That is such an important point, Ian. I totally understand what you're saying and why you're saying that. And I'm just wondering nowadays, with all the cost of living crisis, how does gift giving pressure contribute to stress? And do you have any recommendations for managing that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really, really good question. So the expectation of giving, whilst it's a really beautiful tradition celebrated by many, many people, it can also be hugely overwhelming for people as well. We must remember that many people simply can't afford to engage in that ritual. Financial challenges associated with, as you say, the cost of living crisis can make this incredibly difficult for lots and lots of people and can leave them with that sense of feeling very guilty and very overwhelmed.
Mm.
So I think it's really important for people to just set realistic expectations and to try to communicate as openly as they possibly can with friends and family about their financial boundaries. Meaningful gifts don't always have to come with a hefty price tag. A thoughtful handmade card or present can often mean more than something that's really expensive that the person may not even want. Secret Santa can be a great thing that people can engage with this time of year, especially with work colleagues or groups that people may be a part of or friends. Again, often the fun comes from buying something fun or quirky rather than something really expensive. And it's really easy to set a budget for things like that as well. But it also means that you only have to buy one thing for the person that you're buying for, rather than something for everybody within the group. So that can be a really fun way of just keeping costs down a little.
And there's some really good tips there. So thank you very much for that, Ian. That's really useful. And just sort of taking it on to a slightly different point, what about the impact of seasonal affective disorder, SAD, during the winter months? Can you say a little bit more about that and how individuals can perhaps
Yeah,
cope with
yeah. Well, this is a really serious issue for some. It's more than SAD's more than just the winter blues. It can be really serious mental health challenge for some. It can include symptoms like persistent low mood or loss of pleasure. Can have people feeling irritable, feelings of despair or guilt or worthlessness, to name just a few. It's a form of depression that tends to occur, as the name says, seasonally, often in the winter months, and it can be impacted by a lack of sunlight. Um, so suppose people can relate, or maybe they know somebody that can relate to some of those symptoms. In that case, it's really important for those people just to try to prioritize self-care. And that might include exposure to natural light. It might include things like regular exercise. And in some cases, it may involve reaching out to a mental health professional or GP for additional support as well. So there are things that can be done. In fact, for those that don't know, you and I have just done a podcast on that very subject. So there's a podcast, and I'd really recommend that people take a look at that. Gives lots and lots of ideas and tips, goes into things in quite a lot of detail. And you're talking about that subject in that podcast, Wendy. So would really recommend that people take a look at that if they do recognise any of those symptoms.
Mm, okay. Yes, thank you, Ian. That's a really important point, and it's really good to recognise these things. So another perhaps element to focus on now is the self-care. I
Hmm.
wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about how we can take care of ourselves in this difficult time.
Yeah, of course. So self-care and coping mechanisms can be really important during times of challenge, um, uh, throughout the year generally, but in particular at times like this, if people are struggling. Um, this can be even more important if we know that we're going through a particularly challenging time. Maybe people get very anxious at this time of year. Maybe people have various emotional connections with finances, emotional challenges with finances, or maybe they're going through a period of grief, and they know that this time of year can be particularly triggering for them. So whatever the reason, self-care is fundamental for maintaining mental well-being. It can be as simple as setting aside time for activities you enjoy. It can be going for a walk, reading a book, practicing mindfulness, listening to a piece of music. It's about prioritizing your own needs and giving yourself the space and permission to recharge.
Mm. Okay, yeah, some very, very important points there that you've highlighted. So thank you for that, Ian. And I'm just wondering, just sort of building on that, what about specific coping mechanisms? Can you recommend some healthy ways individuals can cope with stress and challenging emotions?
Yeah, so coping mechanisms can be absolutely essential for managing stress. Engaging in activities that bring joy, that bring a sense of relaxation, incredibly important. So it could include creative outlets like art or writing, physical activities like yoga or exercise, even going for a walk. It could be about connecting with a support system, and that might be friends, that might be family, it might be a therapist, it might be a vicar. It can be absolutely anybody that we might see as being part of our wider support network. So just remembering that stress management is about finding what works for you. So we don't want to be prescriptive. What we really want to do is encourage people to creatively think about what's going to be helpful for them at this time of year. It can be about establishing healthy boundaries, prioritizing tasks, and learning to say no when needed. Um, all of those things can really help us to manage and regulate our stress levels. If we don't look after ourselves, then there's a real risk that we can just burn out, in particular at this time of year when things can be really frenetic for people. So preventing burnout is about creating a sense of balance, pacing yourself, delegating tasks if we're able to do that, and not hesitating to take breaks if we need to.
Okay.
Remember that prioritizing your well-being is okay. Sometimes that might mean stepping back from certain things, and that's okay. It's also important to remember that many things don't have to cost money. People can walk, they can read, they can draw, they can meditate without spending a penny. So suppose finances are contributing to the difficulties of this time of year. In that case, these sort of self-care activities can really be useful for people in that type of situation.
Okay. So thank you for that, Ian. And I think sometimes the problem is, despite our best efforts, the holiday season, Christmas season can bring up very difficult emotions. Can you suggest some ways where people can manage these situations, these difficult emotions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing that I would say is simply acknowledging and accepting emotions. Acknowledge that we're struggling. Acknowledge that we're feeling down, weepy, stressed. And once we've acknowledged those things, we can start doing something with the emotions. Journaling can be a really helpful tool to express the emotions that we're feeling. And additionally, seeking professional help, such as therapy, can provide individuals with a safe space to explore and to understand their emotions more deeply. I would say this time of year can be a really challenging time for many, many people. So if people are struggling, it's really important to remember you are not alone. You aren't the only one.
Mm.
I'd say to everyone, however challenging this time may feel, you really aren't alone. So just be gentle with yourself and just know there are people you can reach out to.
Mhm.
I'd also remind people that it's okay not to have everything perfect. It's okay if dinner is running a few minutes late. Exactly the same thing will be happening in thousands of other people's houses up and down the country. This is a time to prioritize your mental health and remember that seeking support is a sign of strength, not of weakness.
Absolutely. And that's such an important message, Ian. That's such an important message. Thank you for that. And I wonder if you could say a little bit more about relationships and some of the challenges that people can experience with those at this time of the year.
Yeah, of course. So for many, this can be a really joyous time of year, but it can also be a time of unique challenges for couples and for families. The holiday season can amplify existing challenges and introduce new ones, from conflicting expectations to family dynamics. Couples often find themselves navigating through a variety of stresses at this time of year. In all of this, what I'd really stress is that communication is absolutely key. Couples and families should have open and honest conversations about their expectations, their traditions, and how they envisage celebrating this period so that they can agree these things in advance. Finding a sense of common ground and compromise is absolutely essential to ensure everybody feels heard and that everybody feels valued during this time. Family dynamics can be hugely complex and also play a significant role in the potential tensions of this time of year. So, setting boundaries and communicating openly with one another about potential challenges can really, really help. And when we think about family challenges, just remembering couples can really support one another. They can work as a team. They can create a united front when facing family related issues. So really just thinking about how can me and my partner work together as a team.
Yeah, I hear you talk about these communication challenges, and they can be so difficult. And I can imagine for some that can be really, really tough. Are there particular strategies that could be useful?
I think effective communication is absolutely essential when we're talking about things like this. So, active listening, expressing feelings using I statements, being empathetic towards each other's perspective can go a long way. Um, we can also talk about things like setting expectations together. So, before we go into this really busy time of year, taking time to discuss and set expectations in advance, understand each other's preferences, whether it's regarding travel plans or family visits or alone time. And this proactive communication can help prevent misunderstandings and ensure that both partners feel their needs are being considered and that they're both being heard.
Okay.
Scheduling quality time can be really important. So, amongst the hustle and bustle of the holidays, it's really easy for couples to get caught up in various commitments. So, scheduling dedicated quality time for just the two of you, whether it's a cozy night in front of the fire, whether it's a winter walk or a date to enjoy the festivities, just prioritizing shared moments can really help to strengthen that sense of connection with one another.
Okay.
Active listening and empathy. So that practicing of active listening, practicing of empathy when discussing the holiday plans, when talking about family visits or any other concerns that may arise. So making an effort to really try to truly understand your partner's perspective and validating their feelings. And this can just foster a more supportive environment and encourage that sense of open communication without judgment attached to it. Checking in regularly can be really important. So just scheduling time where we check in throughout this time of year, and that could be a really brief daily conversation that you and your partner have, or it could be a more in-depth discussion at the end of the week. But using that time to share the experience, express the feelings that you might be feeling, address any issues that may have arisen. So that regular checkup just helps to maintain a sense of connection and ensure that both partners are on the same page with things, so that you can kind of confront this time of year from a joint perspective. Expressing appreciation, expressing gratitude. So just taking the time to express appreciation for one another, gratitude for one another. This is an opportunity to reflect on the positive aspects of your relationship. So sharing what you love and appreciate about your partner, and that sort of positive reinforcement can really contribute to healthy emotional environments and also act to reinforce the bonds between the two of you as well. And maybe one last thing that I would say is just listening isn't just about what we say in response to somebody. So the whole non-verbal communication of what goes on between two people conveys so much. So when communicating, paying attention to the body language that we and our partners are using, the facial expressions, the tone of voice that we use, be aware of how the non-verbal cues can impact on a conversation. So it's not just the words that we use, it's everything that's going on around that as well. And also encouraging your partner to share their thoughts on how they interpret non-verbal signals that maybe you're sending them, just to avoid any sort of misunderstanding between the two of you as well.
Okay, that's some really good points there, Ian. Thank you very, very much for that. My next question is a bit challenging. So let's say they've tried all of those things and there is still some form of conflict there. Any tips on how people can deal with that, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the first thing to remember is that conflicts are a natural part of any relationship. The key is to approach them with a solution orientated mindset. Instead of blaming one another, trying to focus on the issue at hand. So take breaks if needed, but commit to returning to the conversation with a willingness to understand the other person's perspective and trying to find that sense of common ground in everything, I think can be really, really helpful.
Okay, thank you for that. And my next question it's about timing. Um, do you think there's an optimal time to address conflicts or important topics within a relationship?
I think timing is absolutely critical. And I think the first thing is just trying to pick a calm moment. So select a time when both you and your partner are feeling reasonably relaxed, reasonably calm, not completely overwhelmed by holiday preparations or the events of what's going on around. So avoid addressing conflicts in the midst of a stressful situation at that time where emotions can be really heightened anyway. And then just thinking about private and comfortable settings can be really helpful. So finding a private setting, a comfortable setting where you can have an open and honest conversation without the fear of interruption and without the fear of distraction. And that can just create an environment conducive to that effective communication that we've already talked about, that can be so important when we're looking at conflict resolution within relationships.
Okay.
Avoiding high stake gatherings. So if you're with family or if you're with friends, it might not be the best time to address conflict, especially during really high stake gatherings. So just choosing a time when you both can step away from the larger group and just having a private conversation between the two of you,
Okay.
and trying to be respectful and considerate of your partner's mood. So pay attention to the mood and the energy levels that your partner has at the time that you're thinking about speaking to them. If they're already stressed, if they're already really tired, it might be better to wait for another time when they can fully engage in the conversation without feeling completely overwhelmed. Um, and also not doing it immediately before an event is about to happen. So just avoiding bringing up conflict immediately before a party or celebration, something of that nature. And again, that can just create unnecessary tensions and just impact the overall experience for both of you. So just thinking about what else is going on at that time. Um, and if the conflict is significant, consider agreeing on a specific time to address it. So that allows both partners to mentally prepare and to ensure that the conversation happens at a time when you can both give it the attention that it deserves. Until after that initial flurry of the holiday activities, if the situation allows it, can be really beneficial. And again, it just gives you time to enjoy the festivities and reduces the risk of conflict overshadowing whatever celebrations you're engaging in. So those are just some ideas that people can give some thought to.
And they're very, very good suggestions there, Ian. So thank you so much for your wisdom in those comments. It's very much appreciated. So just finally, Ian, if people have listened to this podcast and maybe as a result they recognise that they are struggling or know that they are approaching a time when they are likely to struggle, if they have heard the self-help areas that we've discussed and think they want something more, can you suggest what people can do?
Yeah, so this is a time of year that organisations like Hope Therapy and Counselling, and I know you as well, Wendy, will get lots of calls from people who are looking with help to work through certain things. So um, if you're considering reaching out, just know that you're not alone. And it's crucial that people see reaching out as a sign of insight, seeing it as a sign of strength, not of weakness. So professional support can really just provide individuals with the tools that they need to navigate challenges and improve mental well-being, as well as supporting the relationships that they're in as well. People are very, very welcome to take a look at our website, which is www.hopefulminds.co.uk. And we've got numerous resources up on the website. We've got blogs, we've got infographics, we've got other podcasts, and details to our counselling team as well. So all of those resources are completely free of charge. And you, of course, too, Wendy, as a hugely experienced CBT therapist, I know you get lots and lots of calls this time of year. So maybe just telling people a little bit about yourself and what you can do for people as well.
Yeah, so I just tend to use my name, Wendy Castellino, and you can Google that and all my resources will come up. I have a specific website called wendycastellino.com, so people can get hold of me via that if they want a CBT therapist who specialises in any of these areas that have risen. Please get in touch. And Ian, it is my great gratitude to you for all the hard work you put into this podcast. Thank you so much for that. And I really want to thank you for that, and to thank you to all our listeners for coming and joining us in the podcast. And I hope you've really picked up some lovely top tips there. So thank you very much.
And thank you to you as well. And best care to you and to all the listeners. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.